97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I love coaching this football team. I love coaching those players in there.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The latest edition dropped this morning with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. Geoff Mosher joins us every Wednesday to talk more about the Philadelphia Eagles here on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that download button for the Inside the Birds podcasting network with all the great podcasts like with Geoff and Adam. And also don't forget Tales from the Blind Side with guys like Trey Thomas, Todd Hermans, Jamal Jackson, Grilling the Eagles with Derek Gunn and Trey Thomas as well. Geoff, am I missing anybody here?
No, I think you got it all there. It's Grilling the Birds, by the way.
Grilling the Birds
with Trey and Derek Gunn.
I was close.
You were close.
I was doing it all off the top of my head, so.
Well, then I give you a standing O for that. Actually, nah, you got to get better. Gil would have gotten it all right.
So, but at least they know what today's day is. It's Wednesday, so. Right, Hunter?
Yes. You had a debacle yesterday for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, Geoff, but I thought yesterday was Thursday for a hot moment, so.
I think during this whole pandemic, I have quite often confused any day that ends in Y with another day. So it's not you alone, Josh. I think we've all been in that boat one way or another during the pandemic.
So where I want to start with you here, Geoff, is the news came out yesterday about Jack Driscoll. And it just feels like the team gets a win, good vibes, and then it's McLeod's done for the year. And then Jack Driscoll's done for the year. It almost feels like this team is destined to not win this year. It's almost like fate is telling you, hey, you may think you want to win, but you were never meant to win.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? It feels like a one step forward, two step backs type of thing to happen to the Eagles, who have been dealing with it all year long. Mostly, it's funny because I texted Kaplan in the middle of the game on Sunday when all the guys in the secondary started to get hurt. And, the Eagles are winning, but I wrote, looks like weeks 1 through 5 called. They want their injuries and dysfunction back. And that's how it felt. I mean, this team tries to build upon momentum and get things going. But the story of the season that doesn't involve Carson Wentz is just how many different offensive line combinations they've had to start and just how many different injuries they've had at multiple positions.
On Wednesdays, Inside the Birds drops the tape study podcast. So what did you guys see in tape, whether it was Hurts, Doug? What stood out to you the most?
Well, I think that from a tape standpoint, Hunter, you get a really good idea of what Doug Peterson and his staff were able to do offensively that they probably hadn't been able to do for the last 5 or 6 weeks. And, why they haven't been able to is really something that we can't say for sure, although I've got some theories, but a lot of mesh concepts built into the playbook. And that means when you have, a slot receiver on the left and a slot receiver on the right, or maybe an inline tight end, either way, someone who's going to run a route where they kind of cross in the middle of the field. And sometimes you'll see they used to do this all the time in 2017. The crossing receivers kind of slap each other, like giving each other a low high five as they're doing that. And that, puts a strain on the defense over the middle, opens some things up on the outside, opens it up the flats also for the running back to catch some passes. And you saw Miles Sanders had, I believe, 5 targets in the passing game and caught 4 of them. So I saw a lot of motion, pre-snap motion, a lot of movement from offensive linemen, pulling and things like that. It's kind of the stuff that we were expecting to see going into the year because they had hired several different assistant coaches who came from different backgrounds. You had Andrew Briner with the spread concepts and Rich Gangarello with the Shanahan-style concepts, and, of course, Marty Morningweg blending that with his West Coast acumen. And, of course, Doug, who likes to incorporate new things. We've seen that in the past. And you saw that more this game. And I know that begs the question, well, why didn't he do that for Carson Wentz? And I don't know that that's a fair question. I do remember, earlier in the year seeing some of these things. And I remember a mesh concept where Carson against the Bengals and Carson threw that interception to Deshaun Jackson, if you guys remember that all the way back then. So, why it doesn't seem to happen between Doug and Carson is kind of the underlying story. And I speculated on the podcast. I don't know this for a fact that maybe Carson just doesn't like that kind of stuff. And Adam has talked in the past about talking with Bill Polian and hearing stories about how Peyton Manning hated motion and pre-snap movement. He wanted to be able to read and dissect the defense on his own and pick it apart without anything getting in his way. But that's Peyton Manning, and he could back it up and play at a high level and win Super Bowls, and that's not the case with Carson.
Jeff, when you guys talk to the guys about looking at the tape, when you got to see the tape as well, I can't help but not remember what I heard from Quincy Avery. He's the quarterback coach for Jalen Hurts. I heard an interview with him last week. We talked about the fact that Hurts' evolution as a thrower came down to mechanics. And I feel like I've heard about you and Adam talk about a million times about Carson Wentz's mechanics. Do you feel like there is a vast difference in between the two quarterbacks in terms of their ability to throw the ball in terms of technically?
I don't know yet. I haven't really been able to sit down and have a long-term look at Jalen Hurts as an NFL quarterback to really get a feel for his mechanics. I do remember Adam saying at the Senior Bowl, he and generally the scouting community didn't think he had the greatest week of practice, and they noticed his delivery style being a little over the top. And I think you do see that with his throws. He does have a kind of an over the top motion. He's certainly not the only quarterback in the NFL that has that. But they do try to work on that and getting a more compact delivery and throwing motion. But I think just mechanically, I think his feet look good, and they look like they're in unison with his throwing motion in a good way. And I think also the way and this is not mechanics, but the way he was able to think and react quickly and move the offense quickly. And that does go back to, being in that kind of offense in Oklahoma. I think that really helps him.
I thought Doug Peterson said something pretty interesting today in his press conference about Mailata and left tackle and next year with Andre Dillard. Let's say Jordan Mailata does win that battle. What can you do with Andre Dillard? Does he have a lot of value? Do people look at him around the league as this first-round pick? Would the Eagles try and sell that to teams? Can he play another position? What would you do in that scenario?
So I don't think Andre Dillard can play another position. He's not built like a guard, and even though sometimes you can get away with it, like a Matt Pryor, he had such natural footwork for the outside tackle position. He's not he doesn't have that like mean, nasty disposition nor playing mentality where I think you want to throw him in there at guard. He's got the dancing bear type feet, the ballerina feet. That just comes naturally to him, and it's a reason why you want him on the outside against some of those speed rushers, which is what dominates the NFL these days, because he's got the ability to turn the hips and use all that space that you have playing the outside. So I don't think guard. I think that's completely out of the question for him. As far as trading him, you could look for a deal. I doubt you're going to get a first round pick because it would be 2 years into his deal, and he's not shown you anything, and maybe not through any fault of his own, but he just doesn't have enough on tape to say, why would you, if you were picking in the first round, give up a first rounder for him when you could maybe get an offensive tackle in the draft in the first round? So it would be difficult, I think, to get that. And I also think that the organization, you're already 2 years through a 4-year deal. You've paid up a decent amount of that upfront money. You don't have to make a decision until after the year on pick fifth year option, which is not even guaranteed anyway. I don't think it hurts, even if you're in love with Jordan Mailata, and they should be. I don't think it hurts to have this guy competing out there as a potential, in case there's an injury. We've seen how many injuries on the offensive line there are this year and last year in the past. And, is it the worst thing in the world? I know the optics stink that he might be not beat out Mailata at left tackle, and here you have a first round pick sitting. But sometimes you have to throw the optics out the window and say, hey, look, this is probably one of the best reserves that we could have, a guy we can pull off the bench. We know how bad around the league that offensive line depth is. So if he's got to be a backup for the next 2 years, it's only because we have a really good situation here at left tackle, which is going to make the team better overall.
Geoff Mosher joining us here on Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Give Geoff a follow on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. Jeff, with that being said, we've seen Mailata play well this year. Jack Driscoll, you could argue that his two best games starting were against two very high-level defenses with Washington and New Orleans. one could argue the Eagles have done a pretty darn good job when it comes to offensive linemen. So why don't people give the Eagles and Howie Roseman credit for that?
I don't know that they don't give the Eagles credit for offensive lineman drafting. I mean, if you're asking why people don't look at that and then give Howie more credit overall as a GM and as a drafter, I would say that opens up a kind of an entirely different discussion. It's almost like saying, like, take a really bad team, maybe the Jets, and you say, well, Quinton Williams is a good player, and Ashton Davis could be a good player, and you start finding like decent players, even though they're a bad team that they drafted in the last 3 years that were better than you thought, and then trying to rationalize why maybe the guy is whoever it was, before Joe Douglas, it was Mike McCagnon. Maybe he was better than we give him credit for. I think a GM should not be evaluated by any singular pick or even just a draft. It's got to be an entire assembling of a roster and a direction of a franchise. And if the franchise is trending in the wrong direction, that falls on the GM as well as other people involved.
Keeping it with the offensive line, Jalen Hurts was sacked 0 times. Was this because the offensive line played extremely better? Was it because Hurts escaped and made some runs? Was it a combination of both?
I think it was a combination of both. I think that when you have a quarterback that keeps its defense on its toes by running the way Jalen Hurts was doing, and then obviously you add in the running game itself with Miles Sanders, and then, of course, the RPOs and the zone reads, it just alleviates the pressure on the offensive line to have to, hold its blocks for a really long time or have a 7 or 8 man front that it's got to block all the time. And, obviously the quarterback change helped there. And what Jalen Hurts did helped. It didn't make the offensive line great overnight, but it allowed guys to get into a better rhythm and a better flow. And, they knew they didn't have to hold their blocks for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds. There were times that Carson Wentz was just really holding on to the ball way too long, or even kind of flowing in and around the pocket, allowing the pocket to collapse. Whereas Jalen just made the decision, if I'm going to run, I'm going to run.
I was talking with Emery Hunt on Monday about this. I heard the guys mention this on the Tales from the Blind Side podcast about Jalen Hurts' decisiveness making a difference. You just touched on it there. What do you think that does also for the play calling? Because we know what it does on the field, what we see, but what does having a decisive quarterback do for the play caller as well?
Yeah, I think it allows Doug to be able to incorporate, first and foremost, he doesn't have to change the offense so much to the point where it's not Doug Peterson's offense. Last week we had a long conversation about the number of vertical routes that Doug was running and how difficult that was with Carson holding onto the ball and the offensive line injuries. Why are there so many vertical routes when it's really hard to get the ball down the field under those circumstances? But here you have a kid who can take advantage of the fact that there's, all this, the guys are running down the field, taking the defense with it, and that opened it up for Jalen to be able to run a little bit more. And that's just another bonus. I think there was a 3rd and 8, if you remember, where it was a quarterback keeper designed, and the routes were vertical, and Jalen ran, and they picked up 7, and that set up an easy 4th and 1. That's one of the 4th and 1s that they were able to convert. So it just allows Doug to be able to continue to run his offense. He can add and implement, but not be completely dependent on trying to do something different.
I know it's only one game, but there's no doubt most are encouraged by Jalen Hurts. Is there something that stood out to you that maybe causes concern moving forward based off of his play?
In what way? Say that again?
Is there something that stands out to you that causes concern moving forward? Like there's some things that he needs to, do better moving down this 3-game stretch if he is the starter. Something that, that scares you a little bit moving forward that he needs to improve.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought you were asking. Yes, I could go through the fact that there were times when he did decide to run, that if he had let plays develop, there would have been openings. But to be fair, it's his first start. It's Definitely. The number 1 defense. Is it nitpicky? A little bit. This is what this week is for, right? For watching the tape, seeing where he can develop, seeing some of the plays. Even he said after the game, we left some. It wasn't meat on the bone. It was like money on the table, right? I think that's what he said. So, the kid clearly has an understanding that, he was able to win his first start, but there's other ways that he can improve and the offense can improve. So yes. So I would say that I think we would have this conversation about any quarterback making his first start, that there are areas that you would like to see improve. There was nothing that I thought was catastrophic, though, where I thought, man, this is going to kill this kid for the next 3 games. I didn't see. I was more impressed by his ability to process, read the blitz when it was coming, get rid of the ball quickly, or run quickly. And I think that's going to be his advantage on Sunday when they play an Arizona team that I think will be a lot more prepared to deal with what the Eagles are going to try to do offensively.
Something that stands out to me that I keep hearing is the leadership quality side of things. And you heard Miles Sanders talk about it as well. And it just seems when you compare the two, and there's been some smoke around Carson Wentz and his background, his leadership qualities, and who he is as a teammate, I just feel when you look at the confidence in Jalen Hurts and the teammates speaking about his leadership, there is clearly a difference between maybe what Carson Wentz brings to the table and Hurts.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, Hunter. And I say that because it's been easy for Jalen Hurts. He's been the backup, right? I mean, most people have wanted him in, at least from a fan standpoint. He goes in, he plays well, taking teams by surprise is always good, and he has not had adversity yet. So I'm sure in 2017, if you go back and what was being said about Carson and his teammates, you would have heard the same thing. Leader, great teammate, fires us up. All these plays that he's making just makes us want to go out and play harder. I mean, all that stuff is easy right now for Jalen Hurts because the bar is low and he's coming in and trying to salvage a lost season. What happens if he loses 30-3 on Sunday and then doesn't look good against Washington? How much great leadership are you going to hear about Jalen Hurts? So I'm not saying he's not a good leader, by the way. I think look what he went through at Oklahoma and Alabama. I think all people know what he went through, and they were very proud of the way he handled himself, and they know that he's classy and he is the son of a coach. I think that part of it comes into the leadership too, but I don't see it as an incrimination of Carson Wentz's leadership style. I will say maybe that there is something about whether or not he's as relatable to his teammates, but you definitely heard guys like Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox last week stick up for Carson and say that it's not all on him and that how important Carson has been to the team.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. Him and Adam Kaplan reviewing the Eagles games from this past Sunday, also starting to look ahead to the next game. One of the things you guys talked about on the pod this morning, Javon Hargrave. This guy, in his last 4 games, he has 4 tackles for loss. He has 5 on the entire year. He has 3 sacks in the last 4 games. He has 4.5 on the entire year. What do you credit this resurgence of his play? Is it just because he's healthy? Is it because he's finally understanding his role in the defense? What do you think are the reasons why this guy is finally starting to emerge for the Eagles D?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, he missed the entire pretty much training camp. You're on a new team. Everybody knew the free agents were going to have trouble this year because if they're joining a new team in a new scheme, they were already behind from no OTAs. And then he got hurt with the pectoral injury in the weight room. So he missed all of training camp. And this particular style of defense, it's been called an easy defense, but it's not easy from a technique standpoint. You have to learn a whole lot of different techniques to use with your hands and your get off on the snap. And you saw that with Tim Jernigan in 2017. He did have the OTA. So he struggled in the OTAs and then early in training camp and then really kind of turned it on in mid-September to October and became a really good, run stuffing tackle for them. And so that's what put Javon behind the 8 ball. I went back and watched some tape yesterday of his first 3 or 4 games, and you could just see it. He was not explosive off the line of scrimmage. There was a play against the 49ers where he was head up on a center, which is usually the smallest guy among the offensive line. And he was stonewalled by the 49ers center. And you could just tell his hand usage wasn't there. His conditioning probably wasn't there. But right around the time when they played Baltimore and Pittsburgh back-to-back, he didn't have sacks in those games, but he looked a lot more explosive. He was making disruptive plays. He did have a couple of tackles for a loss in those games. That's where I think he really started to turn the corner as far as understanding how to play in this defense. And over the last 2 or 3 games, it's more of not just how to play, but how to dominate and really have your strengths accentuated. So it's been a great development It's one of the signings that I did not criticize early on when he wasn't playing well, because every person in the league who I spoke to when the Eagles signed him thought it was a great signing and he would fit in really well. So it wasn't one of those questionable things where you wonder, did they really screw up the evaluation there? It was a good match, and now you're starting to really see the fruits of it.
We know the news about Rodney McLeod's injury, keeping him off the field. Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox, they got hurt as well. What are the options to patch up this secondary moving forward?
I don't know. What are you doing, lady? What kind of shape are you in, Hunter?
I can do it.
All three of us, you and Josh, are better shape than me, so you guys might be called on next.
I think I'm too short.
I don't know. Avonte Maddox played the outside.
Roby Coleman, Josh.
Yeah.
I think Roby Coleman can jump higher than me, even though he might be shorter than me.
Yeah, but he doesn't have your calves, brother, man. Those big fake calves that you got and those big biceps. Everybody knows you're in the gym 24/7 when you're not on radio.
Well, listen, I could tackle. I did play safety when I was younger, but I just don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know if I have the vertical to keep up with these big receivers and not jump them,
Well, then we'll just put you at box safety, okay?
Okay.
Because the Eagles need one of those, too. They're going to move Jalen
Mills to the outside, right? Yeah.
Right. So you got Mills on the outside. We'll have to see what happens with Darius Slay. Hopefully he can come back and play, and that'll give you a Slay-Mills cornerback tandem, which, you could do a lot worse. I know nobody loves Mills on the outside, but at some point, you don't want to be bringing – you had Kayvon Seymour and Jamison Houston. You're talking about practice squad guys and guys who signed off the street. You don't really want that. So if you can have Mills and Slay at corner, and then your safeties would probably be mostly Epps and Kevon Wallace, who have been with the team all year. Epps is in year 2. So it's not great. I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture of it, but at least you're not necessarily playing guys off the street. However, that's under the assumption that Slay is going to be able to go. If not, then it really is going to be difficult. And if at any time during the game anybody gets hurt, which seems to happen every game, then you're really in a struggle. And remember, the Cardinals do play a lot of 4 wide. So you've got Nickel Roby-Coleman, hopefully Darius Slay, Mills for 3, but then that 4th wide receiver on the field is probably going to have a nice little matchup depending on who the Eagles are going to put there.
So with all that being said, before getting too much deeper into it, do you think the Eagles can do anything with the Cardinals that maybe they weren't able to do versus the Saints?
Do I think that they will do something against the Cardinals that they couldn't do against the Saints?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully making field goals and extra points would. Because that's really the only thing they struggled at against the Saints. I do think the Cardinals present some different challenges. First of all, if anybody's going to be prepared for some of the motion schemes, and if you want to call it college offense that the Eagles are going to try to run, it's going to be the Cardinals, because not only do they practice against Kyler Murray every day, but when they're not, they're in their division, they're playing the Rams and they're playing the 49ers, who use all of that probably as much as any team in the NFL. And then when they're not playing those two teams, they're playing Seattle. So they're used to kind of Russell Wilson's ability to make plays outside the pocket. So from a preparation standpoint, I don't think the Cardinals are going to be fooled by a whole lot of whatever the Eagles are going to show them. They certainly shouldn't. And I do think with a week of tape watching that they'll have, and it's a pretty good defense, by the way, that Arizona has. I know their adjusted defensive analytic numbers are better than their kind of overall yards per game, which they're not bad at, but they're middle of the pack in some areas. But I think it's going to be – I don't think the Eagles can play the same exact game that they played against New Orleans and expect to win.
He is Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcasting network. Him and Adam Kaplan drop Monday after the game, Wednesday morning, and then Friday morning. Also check out Tales from the Blind Side, Grillin' the Birds, and more all on the Inside the Birds podcasting network. Follow Geoff on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL for all your NFL and Eagles analysis. And also check out, Broads and Mosher.
Yeah,
on Sports Talk with Birds.
Motion Broads.
Motion Broads.
Yeah, we talk some stuff. Sports.
Oh, yeah. Motion Broads and Mosh, whatever you want to call it. We're going to do another one soon.
Yes, we are.
There you go. Right. Covering all the bases there, and all guests he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Great stuff today, Geoff.
Thanks very much, guys. Great talking to you, and talk to you again on Friday.
Josh Hennick filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, the 97.3 ESPN Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. Brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now with that match first deposit up to $250. Go to playsugarhouse.com and win real money with their sportsbook along with casino games for the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.